The Imperium of Man has always relied on the unrelenting and courageous defense of the Astra Militarum, or the Imperial Guard. Although not as powerful as the Adeptus Astartes, or as efficient as the Scutari legions, or even as well equipped as the Sisters of Battle, they have always relied on the tried and tested strength of the Imperial Guard's armored legions. Since before the Emperor of Mankind decided to unify humanity, its soldiers have relied on the brute force of tanks. These human-designed war machines are the cornerstone of the Imperial Guard. From the Leman Russ battle tanks to the Baneblades, each is a fine-tuned engine of war. But no tank has demonstrated as much firepower as the legendary Shadow Sword Heavy Battle Tank. And with that said, I want to welcome you guys back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gersh1, and today we're going to be talking about the Shadow Sword Heavy Battle Tank. If you guys are new to the channel, we post Warhammer 40K lore videos every single day, so subscribe to the channel if you want to learn more about the 40K universe. If you have any questions about the 40K universe or have specific topics that you guys would like us to cover, comment down below and I'll try to create a video for you guys, or I'll point you to the right direction as far as where the video already is. And if you guys enjoy our content, thank our patrons on Patreon. It is because of them that we can do this. Link in the description if you guys want to support us. But with all of that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Shadow Sword Heavy Battle Tank. The Shadow Sword Super Heavy Tank was originally created sometime during the Dark Age of technology. It was intended to add overwhelming and efficient firepower to any army. It was one of the most potent armored destroyers in the arsenals of the Imperial Army during the Great Crusade. Its terrifying reputation was quickly instilled on the enemies of mankind. But as the unification of humanity spread throughout the galaxy, this super heavy tank became a simple propaganda tool for the expeditionary fleets of the Crusade, as the Imperium rarely confronted an enemy that required the armor-piercing power of the Shadow Sword. It wasn't until the eruption of the galactic civil war known as the Horus Heresy that the Shadow Sword finally came into prominence, as both the Loyalist and Traitor forces regularly battled Titans, Knights, Siege Automatons, and other super-armored units. As a result, many Solar Auxilia cohorts quickly integrated the Shadow Sword into their tactical reserves to confront these growing threats. On the battlefield, the Shadow Sword's sole and unique role was a Titan killer. Its volcano cannon was able to bring down Warlord Titans in one fell shot if the Titan's void shields failed to dissipate the blast. This capacity of sheer destruction made the Shadow Sword a welcome addition to the Imperial Guard's vehicle pool, for it allowed the soldiers of the Imperium to engage enemy Titans without the support of the Adeptus Mechanicus Titan legions. If no enemy Titans were present, the Shadow Sword was sometimes deployed as a siege tank, obliterating enemy fortifications at long range, or as a support heavy armored hunter. The sheer capacity of devastation of its volcano cannon was often enough to demoralize and put en route those enemies of mankind who actually cared about their survival. But unlike its sister tank, the Baneblade, the Imperial Guard commanders were loath to field these rare and precious Shadow Swords in any other role than a Titan hunter. This reluctance stems from the fact that for all of the devastating might of the volcano cannon, the Shadow Sword's drawback almost always overshadows the potential advantage of fielding it, except when it's hunting Titans. The volcano cannon was first designed as a Titan-grade weapon, and it was fitted to a battle Titan. The power required to fire comes directly from the God Machine's plasma reactor. Instilling a plasma reactor into a super heavy tank's chassis had always proved impossible for safety reasons. Hence, the Mechanicus devised a power converting system, which allows the weapon to draw the necessary power from the tank's engine by increments and build it up in a set of capacitors until the charge was high enough to fire the volcano cannon. The system proved efficient, but it imposed several limitations on the Shadow Sword. In a combat situation, the tank's engine must simultaneously propel the tank and charge the gargantuan volcano cannon capacitors. This results in the Shadow Sword maintaining an extremely low maximum speed, forcing the tank to lumber forward slowly, meter by meter. And even with the majority of the engine's energy output going towards charging the capacitors, the volcano cannon itself had a low rate of fire at less than 1 shot per minute, and had almost no traverse in its fixing settings, requiring the tank to be bodily aimed at the target. Worse still, the engine of the Shadow Sword had to be stopped before firing the volcano cannon in order to prevent any feedback from the capacitors, which had the potential for catastrophic results. This made any form of dynamic targeting impossible, and leaves the Shadow Sword a sitting duck, highly vulnerable to air assault and counter battery fire for long moments, as it must restart its engine and start lumbering forward again. Additionally, the energy demands of the volcano cannon were so voracious that the Shadow Sword's secondary armament was reduced to a 2 twin-link heavy bolter system, it was inadequate to fend off any form of concentrated assault. All of these drawbacks meant that in the absence of sufficient large and potent targets, the Shadow Sword will remain in reserves and out of harm's way, carefully tended to by the tech priests and engine seers for those moments when its extraordinary firepower was truly required. In the current millennium, the Shadow Sword has become a relic. Few working tanks exist, as the complexity of the main weapon and the capacitor's function was lost or forgotten, and the vehicles simply were lost to disrepair. On the rare occasion where an Imperial Guard regiment is lucky enough to have a surviving and working Shadow Sword, a tank formation was designed to support this single operating Titan killer. Known as the Shadow Sword Domination Force, this formation embodies the application of naval tactics, and it is used when fighting across open, flat deserts and wastes. The unit is centered upon a single Shadow Sword, which is the primary command platform of the whole force. Formed up around the Shadow Sword in such a manner as to protect and support it is the second echelon, consisting of escorting Leman Russ battle tanks. Further out, forming a protective screen around the large vehicle, are a number of Sentinel Scout Walkers. The force is able to dominate a large region of a war zone, for it is able to launch fearsome mobile attacks and is a very difficult target for most foes to engage. To attack the Shadow Sword itself, an enemy must first break through the expendable Sentinel screen, as well as the battle tank escorts. Many of these domination forces field the support echelons of Hydra flank tanks. These are able to protect against aerial attack, and some even have a wing of Chimera-mounted infantry, who specialize in actions against enemy vehicles and infantry. This formation was made popular during the Age of Apostasy in the early 30th millennium, and most regiments still claim to be able to field the Shadow Sword Domination Force. Whether this is true or propaganda, no one can really be sure. And those were 40 facts on the Shadow Sword Super Heavy Tank. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was a viewer request, so if you guys have any suggestions for other tanks or any other topics of 40K that you guys would like us to cover, let me know what they are in the comment section below, and I'll try to create a video for you guys. It's always fun to talk about tanks. I know sometimes when we talk about Imperial Guard vehicles or Imperial Guard weaponry, the lore could be kind of dry because they're so similar to like modern day tanks and modern day weaponry. And when we talk about 40K, we want to hear about the cool stuff, like, do Space Marines have penises? Because that's really what you guys like to ask. But it's always fun to go back and talk about like this kind of stuff. It's an aspect of the hobby that I understand why it's there, and I understand why it's cool to most people. Like when you go to a Michael's or a Hobby Lobby, there's an entire aisle dedicated to these type of like tanks from World War I, World War II, and like there's an entire genre of like war games that is enveloped into 40K, which is really awesome. But again, if you guys have suggestions for any other topics of the Imperial Guard, let me know what they are in the comment section below, and I'll try to create a video for you guys. And I've always been tempted to go in there and buy one of those tanks and like just kit bash it and make it a looted wagon for the orcs. That's always fun. That might be a video in the near future. We'll see. But thanks so much for listening, and I will talk to you tomorrow. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate signing out.